GL Bajaj, the #1 institute.
We are into the second episode of the Educators Dialogue. This time, there is yet another incisive discussion for you, and I'm sure you will all be very, very interested. We shall be discussing the concept of Make in India versus globalization for education or in education, whichever way you want to put it. So let's look at the keywords. What are the keywords here? The keywords here are Make in India, globalization and education. Now we associate Make in India with Modinomics. Mind you, I have mentioned Modinomics, मैंने saffronization of education बिल्कुल नहीं बोला है. So Modinomics has its own ups and downs, of course. So when it comes to education and globalization, what do we understand? Is it our students from India going to Princeton and Harvard and Columbia or Oxford, Cambridge, INSEAD, wherever, and making a name for themselves? Is it about our students abroad and the government constantly making efforts or whimpering about brain drain and saying that these people should come back and serve in our industries, make India proud? Is it about attracting FDIs and investments from foreign universities to make the educational infrastructure here stronger? Is it about foreign universities sending their faculty here? Is it about faculty exchanges? Is it about student exchanges? There are hundreds of questions which are there. So on the panel today, we have Dr. Urvashi Makkar. She is Director of GLBIMR Institute of Management. I would like to request Dr. Urvashi Makkar, to what extent do you agree with what Dr. Harsh has just said?
Well, thank you, Arvind. I'm sure that as per the other panelists' point of view, Dr. Harsh has just put forward his opinion. One thing is very clear, that there is a 100% congruence between education, globalization and Make in India. And one point is really important, that if we really want to have skillful India, Saksham Bharat, definitely we need to have globalization in education. And there has to be very strong congruence with Make in India with the globalization. If we think, as Dr. Harsh has very pertinently put forward, that using Apple only is the sign of globalization, we might be on the faulty grounds. The point is that there has to be a balance between the influx of global universities into India and how much in-house global universities we can produce within our country. That is a big challenge. And once we talk about this challenge of creating skillful India, a developed India, Saksham Bharat in education, undoubtedly our focus has to be on three parameters. The first and foremost definitely is the quality of education. We can't only rely on the global universities imparting education to our students and we are just boasting about it, that yes, our sons and daughters have got the degrees from the top universities of US, Canada, Australia or whatever. The point is whether we are going to have the global universities in our country and we are going to feel proud that we are also contributing towards globalization. And very interestingly, the concept of globalization in India is not a new concept. In the 5th century, Nalanda University has been one example of globalization, which has been the formal center of learning from 5th century to 12th century. And it was catering to the needs of educational enterprising among us the whole globe, and thousands of students across the globe used to come to India to get the best of the education. So quality of education is the key word which has to be imparted by the Indian universities. We have to develop indigenous centers of excellence, which unfortunately are like islands in our country. The maximum number of the institutions, specifically in the private sector, obviously are being accused of not being imparting the quality of education despite so many constraints they are focusing and facing also. So quality of education definitely is one struggle, one challenge, and definitely one strategic outlook which is needed currently in the education in our country. The second point has to be the focus on the regional balance of education. We have to have the spread of education across the different geographical boundaries within our country, the reach of the education to each and everyone, and of course to the masses. Unfortunately, in our country, specifically in the higher education, at the time of independence, the enrollment in the higher education was hardly 2 lakhs, which today is more than 80 lakhs. But we have increased only in the absolute numbers. If we'll take the percentage, it is less than 6% of the total population of our country. So the reach of the education to the masses, the imbalance in terms of the geographical spread is one of the biggest challenge. And the third point, which I strongly believe is needed in our country if we really want to vouch on the words like globalization in education, is the affordability of education. Affordability of education to the masses, whether we are going to give the availability of education to the masses or not, is again a big challenge. So if we can have this tripartite strategy focusing on quality, regional balance, and of course the affordability of education, I'm sure the contribution of India towards globalization will be very high. Otherwise, it will be only one-sided influx of the global campuses in our country, in our soil, or it will be that our students would be leaving our country in the name of the brain drain, and they'll be just getting the education from the foreign universities. So that is my take, and I'm sure that if our focus on quality of education is needed, we have to again think about so many issues which are again intertwined, like the academic leadership, which is a big scarcity today. Dr. Harsh just has highlighted the importance of autonomy of universities. Done. Very fine. We can give the autonomy of the universities, which definitely is being enjoyed by most of the universities today. But where is the academic leadership? Where are the visionary and transformational vice chancellors of the different universities, which are giving the different shape to our universities, which are revamping the universities, which are really having the focus on the skill enhancement, which are really having the focus on value added education, which has been the focus amongst the global universities today. So that has to be the focus.
GLBIMR, the #1 institute.
I'd like to ask Dr. Urvashi at this point. Now, like Dr. Xaviers has pointed out, that there are the famous institutes, and there are the as we say, the tier 3, tier 4 level of institutes. The talent in the lower hierarchy, the lower down in the hierarchy of institutes, has to match up. But so does it really match up, and does it have the infrastructure, the capabilities, the thought processes, the incisiveness to convert Indianization into globalization?
So well, thank you, Arvind. Very rightly put question over here, that whether we are really incorporating Indianization and innovation amongst the private institutions. And as Dr. Xaviers has said very rightly, that most of the innovations currently are being, you can say, initiated from the private sector. If we'll talk about the technological advancements, the entirely different classroom teaching environment, if we'll talk about the adoption of, say for example, the SMAC technologies, today it is the private sector which is having the lead front runner's place, and they are the ones who are taking the lead in adoption of the technologies, in adoption of creating innovation in these different pedagogical tools, and of course in adoption of the curriculum revamping also.
For Dr. Urvashi, that you need to innovate, as Dr. Xavier said, Professor Xavier said. So how would you encapsulate the entire discussion?
First, as we already have discussed, the discussion has been really interesting on the various parameters, and wonderful points have come out. And I very strongly believe that Indianization of education definitely is one USP which can be created by our country, which tomorrow can become our biggest strength, even to encapsulate the foreign universities, and of course to break those boundaries which today are there between the Indian institutions and the global universities.
Thank you. So finally, it has been a great link it up, So the link it up has been perfect between Make in India, globalization and education. Whatever be the terminology, wherever be the concept, the base of the concept, I believe that sooner or later the epicenter is going to be India. And India is going to lead the world so far as education is concerned. We request our readers, we request our viewers to send in their opinion, and based on that we would base the next episode of the Educators Dialogue. Thank you.